As a young child growing up in the small southwestern Ontario city of Galt, I wanted to hide my family's vegetable garden, pretend it didn't exist, erase it from the neighborhood. I felt embarrassed by our rows of beans, peas, tomatoes, and strawberries. They were like a banner announcing our less than robust financial circumstances to the community. Everyone else seemed to be straining for the upmarket trappings of consumer culture, buying glamorous cars like convertibles, while we made do with a Rambler station wagon, eating exotic fare like avocados while we had pig's tails for dinner. And growing food was a decidedly down-market thing to do. Our garden signaled need, just one more item in a long list of evidence that my family did not fit in. It didn't help that one year, during a period of compost experimentation, my father buried food waste directly in the soil between the rows. After a particularly heavy rain, eggshells started poking up through the dirt. Yet another advertisement for our oddness. I remember the precise moment when my feelings about the garden began to change from embarrassment to engagement. It was after a summer dinner when I was 6. For dessert, we'd had watermelon and I'd hoarded the seeds. After dinner, I sprang up from the table with the stash in my hand and a vision in my head. I was going to plant those pips. I was going to have my own little garden tucked under the shrubs by the side of the house. I don't know how long it took for me to realize that nothing was going to come of my plantation, that shade equals watermelon failure, that late summer is not the time to seed an annual crop in southern Ontario. But I can still summon the yearning stretch of my dreamy plan, the way it fired me up with hope for a future that included a small corner of my own tending. However small my tentative gestures might have been, they participate in a much larger story, a story that is chipping away at convention and inverting notions we've held dear for decades. Food comes from farms, we're told, farms that exist in the countryside, separated from cities, not just by physical distance, but by an attitudinal divide that is much harder to breach. The countryside is clean and pure, closer to nature. Cities are dirty, far from nature, essentially nature corrupted. Urban soils and air are contaminated, vandals lurk around every corner, and even if we could overcome these dangers, there's simply not enough room in North American cities to waste space doing something that properly belongs in the country. So the old story goes anyway. When we dig in the dirt and cultivate food, what we're also doing, beyond growing the basil, is staking out territory for an expanded notion of what our cities might be. We're making room for productivity in a place defined for too long as incapable of meeting, even partially, one of our most basic needs. Maybe this explains, to some degree at least, the giddy high that comes from unearthing an urban potato. Yes, it's most definitely just a potato, and that is reason enough for deep satisfaction for those of us who love the lowly spud. But it's also a possibility of a different way of living in cities.